Good afternoon, members of the media. Thank you all very much for standing around for so long. I won't keep you too long. I just wanted to indicate to you that we've had a very productive weekend in Tobago. As you know, I started off with screening for candidates on Saturday afternoon, and then we spent all of Sunday, the Parliamentary government Caucus, and most of today. One of the main issues that we dealt with, which would have been of wider national interest, was the whole question of a response to my indication that I would be giving up the office of Prime Minister sometime in the near future. I did not give a particular date, but certainly earlier rather than later. And then that having been said, and my intention being firm, the question now was the replacement as Prime Minister. As you would know, once a vacancy arises with respect to the appointment of a Prime Minister, it falls to the President to respond to that by making an appointment of the person who, in the President's view, commands the majority in the House. And those provisions exist in Section 76 of the Constitution. So we, as a caucus of the PNM in the House, we discussed at length, and we, in the end, came up with a situation where the entire PNM caucus is in support of Member of Parliament Stuart Young, Member of Parliament for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's East, St. Anne's West. St. Anne's, Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West. And we are very pleased to announce that the promise of a smooth transition is going according to plan. The PNM is a very stable and democratic organization. In this case, the President would be guided by the expectation of the caucus, and there would be no discrepancy between what the President thinks as against what others may think as to who has the support of the majority in the House. So basically, that is what has happened. We've also, the General Secretary has also been guided to open nominations for the 2 Port of Spain seats and the 3 Diego Martin seats, Diego Martin Northeast, Diego Martin Central, and Diego Martin West. Those nominations will close alongside Port of Spain South and Port of Spain North and Dan's West. Those are the only 5 outstanding constituencies of the 40. We also opened nomination for the constituency which was Dabadi Omera, which was occupied by Lisa Morris Julian, who unfortunately, as you know, passed away recently. So we are calling for nomination in that constituency as well. It has a new name. I think it is Mausika Maloney is the name. And the closing date for those nominations for which the call has now been made, the closing date would be January 27th. I think that's a Friday, because you normally give about 3 weeks for the constituency to source their candidates, and the screening will take place soon after that. So those are the decisions that I wanted to mention to you here, and so that you can understand that we are moving steadily ahead to being in a position to take part in the election that is due sometime during this year, and the PNM would be very ready. Notwithstanding the fact that I am not offering myself in Diego Martin West, I spoke to my constituency this morning, and they are quite happy that they are in a position to ensure that there is no hiccup in Diego Martin West. Now that the call has been made, we will see what candidates come up in Diego Martin West. They'll be screened, and we'll be ready for the elections in the not too distant future, sometime during 2025. If you have any questions, I'll try to take them. Yes.
Prime Minister, how soon do you anticipate Minister Young to move into that position as Prime Minister?
There are a couple of things that I'm still committed to doing before I come out of office. One of which is to attend the CARICOM meeting in Barbados. That is on the 19th of February. And sometime after that, I would indicate the actual date when I leave. But I'm busy on some matters that I'm wrapping up. I don't want to just walk away and leave things that I could do easily for somebody else to do with more difficulty. So I am pretty much winding up these matters. That would be my last CARICOM meeting, and I am chairman of a couple of positions there. I want to make sure that one, they now know that I'm going, and two, what we are able to do in some element of closing off. So that meeting is taking place in Barbados. Prime Minister Motley will be chairing, and I would wrap up some matters that I have in hand on security and also West Indies cricket matters. And after that, I come back to Trinidad and Tobago. There are a couple of things here that I'll wrap up at home, and I should be ready for Carnival and ready for moving out of this position.
And that's the Prime Minister position. What about political leader of the PM?
Well, the political leader matter comes up with respect to a convention, because once the resignation is effected, as I told you earlier on, that is a matter involving the president and an appointment in the context of the majority in the parliament. So while we did have some senators here who are ministers, they did not take part in the process because that is a lower house matter for elected members. So at the time of dealing with this matter of who would support and who would be supported, that was handled purely by the House members. A convention will take place in the PNM, and we've discussed it, and the earliest that we expect to have that convention is the end of September. I think September 20, what's the last Sunday in September? That's the 28th, I think it is. I think it's the 28th, September 28th. So that would allow the party members to weigh in, and of course, in the meantime, we would have dealt with the vacancy that would have been created, and the presidential appointment deals with that. And it's going to go very smoothly, because
the MSJ, they held a virtual news conference yesterday, and they said, you raised your salary, now you have resigned. It's a slap in the face to the people of the country. Sorry.
I am not going to respond to any of MSJ's points of view. The MSJ has been expressing points of views here for decades, and they always seem to be points of views that are not helpful. I am not engaging in any discussion of that nature. I have not taken part in any discussion, and I want to make it clear again, as I leave this post after 45 years in public life, I have held a number of positions, including that of Prime Minister. I have never once spoken to one person in the Salaries Review Commission about the emoluments of any position that I hold in Trinidad and Tobago. Never once have I advocated for, made any submission, and on that score, I am done with that. If the MSJ is upset about that, that is still a free country.
The opposition is still asking why, in terms of coming out of the crime situation and into the new year, the opposition is still asking why is the National Security Minister, Fitzgerald Hines, is still having his position, and why has he not been fired?
I am not going to respond to the opposition on who should or should not be fired. A person who holds an office in a cabinet, in a government that has the authority to be government, and a prime minister makes appointment to the cabinet. The opposition's hatred for people is not part of my management portfolio. The opposition's vitriol against individuals. The opposition's position that our crime problem is a Fitzgerald Hines problem. I don't subscribe to that. because I know they don't view me in any way different to the way they view Fitzgerald Hines. I mean, as a matter of fact, I think they spend more time saying that I should go. So I'm not, if that is all the opposition can contribute to the national debate, I've said to you all before, that they are pathetic. They have nothing to contribute. What is it about Fitzgerald Hines that Fitzgerald Hines works in the cabinet, he's working for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and the fact that they don't agree, the system allows them not to agree. But this apparent persecution, I'm not in that. Ministers of government have been moved, have been promoted, have been removed, but the bottom line is, we focus. We are focused on what we are doing. And the opposition does not have to approve, right, who is in the government, because if opposition could have moved people out of government and you do what the opposition says, I want to remind you all, the very first thing I did when I was opposition leader was to warn Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa not to put Jack Warner in our cabinet because he will embarrass the country. And what did she do then? Didn't she appoint him to the cabinet? And didn't she make him acting prime minister in the country until he embarrassed the country? So what is this relentless Fitzgerald Hines story? We are not in that. We have serious business to attend to. And Fitzgerald Hines has his work to do. In his ministry, there's also Minister Scotland. They are working with the police and the security agencies to ensure that we get the better of the criminal element.
Did Minister Young receive unanimous support? Because I know there were some other names being bandied about who would have been interested in the position of Prime Minister and political leader. Any division, anything?
Minister Young was one of he was one of the two people who would offer themselves to accept the position if it was offered, and Minister Young came out with the majority of support. The other person was Minister Beckles.
What are the qualities in Minister Young? Because I know earlier you said you had no picker, you had no favorites, but no indication you had put a lot of trust in Minister Young from very early and then recently letting him hold the reins as Prime Minister. What are the qualities in Minister Young that you're so confident about that he'll make a good Prime Minister and a good representative of the people?
Well, Minister Young has been in government now for, this is going into our 10th year, operating out of the office of the Prime Minister, where he would have seen the government close up and would have participated in the government. I have seen him at work on many very detailed and technical assignments, and he has not only done the job but has distinguished himself. I have worked very closely with Minister Young, and while many other members of the cabinet could also have been considered, I have no doubt that Minister Young's experience, his dedication, and his commitment to the people of Trinidad and Tobago will ensure that during the period that he has the responsibility for being Prime Minister, he will continue to put the people of Trinidad and Tobago's interests first, and his competence and experience will allow us to get the best of an officer in that position.
So why did you announce your decision to step down during an STA? That was a concern for a lot of people, that at a time where the country should have a strong leader, we have one who says, well, I'm good there.
I am still the Prime Minister until I leave. And the bottom line is, when I leave, the person who will replace me will be just as strong. And I want to make it clear again that the state of emergency was not something that was planned for that particular day with advance notice. But my leaving this position was quite well organized long in advance. So I knew when I wanted to go, right? And that is basically what it is. And it's not a question of, as I have seen it said, you know, it's kind of funny that my colleague in the opposition spent all the time saying how bad I was and I should go. And the day I'm going, she said that the country is in darkness. I guess that happens to you when you drink, right? Every day you're making a fuss that I should leave the office, I should resign, I should go. And here I am, I'm going. And the only comment you could make is that the country has been plunged into darkness. I mean, that can't be taken seriously. I think she should be happy. Because since you think it's the person in office that is the problem, all the country's problems is the person in office. It is never that. Governmental decisions are usually about making choices from options. And good governance is about making the best option in situations. Because there's always another possibility, another way of doing it. And some people will think it's A, some will think it's B. Sometimes some think it's the whole alphabet. But a decision has to be made. And one of the things I think this government has done, and that I have done as Prime Minister, is that we've seen the priorities, we've identified the priorities, we've taken the decisions in the best options to bring about good results, or the best results available for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We have made a lot of very tough decisions. And some people have seen them for what they are, giving the public interest the best option. Others have seen it that these hard decisions are somehow personal attacks on the population. But you can't take that seriously. You can't take that seriously. You have to see what were the options. Because if you notice, these criticisms usually do not go with a firm position from the others that we should do this or we should do that. It's always what you have done is bad. And they stop right there. Right? Everything you do is bad. If you were in there, what would have been your position? And in the few instances that they would have attempted to give you their option, very quickly you will see that that option is not the best for the population. That's usually how it goes. But when you are in office, you have to be prepared to do the things that give the wider national population the best option to get the best out of the situation. That's what governance is about.
And is there any regrets as you're coming out of office?
No, I think that I use my time in a useful way. I have not been always successful with everything I have embarked upon, but I think by and large, I would like to believe that I was able to contribute not only to my life, so that my children could have a country in which they can be proud and can have an opportunity to be good citizens, but every other child from every other family. So from that standpoint, even though there were times when I felt that it was difficult, it was stressful, I always persevered because I know it is for the benefit of the wider national good. If you ask me, if I was making a decision today as to whether I will go into politics to become a minister or an MP or a prime minister, I will tell you a different thing. That's a different story, but I didn't start today. I started getting involved in public life in 1980 or 1974. I joined the PNM. And at that time, I had a different perspective. I didn't have a family. I had time on my hands. I had age on my side. So I made the decisions then. But I want to see as I leave that public life is viewed as honorable and something in which young people can be encouraged to get involved in, rather than be scared away by this constant stream of hatred, bile, and vitriol, which some people seem to think must be the portion once you come into public life. Because if that continues to be the way we treat it, and the population buys into the nastiness that people just put out and say that is politics, then good people will stay away from it. And if good people stay away, only a certain other kind of people will rush in. And then that is what you will get as your leadership and your management. Because there will never be a time when there's no government in this country. You will always get people wanting to be there. And sometimes the people who are going to rush in are not the ones, and that's why you have elections. So you can choose, because elections have consequences. And I believe that I spent a lot of time in my life, more than half of my life, in public life for the wider national good. And I really do not have any regrets. But I think I'm happy that I'm able to leave now. I'm in relatively good health. I have a few days left in the eyes of the Almighty, I hope many days, and I look forward to enjoying those days. And I simply, at this point, want to say thank you to the hundreds of people who in the last few days have literally been lighting up my phone night and day, expressing thanks, because I know that there are people who believe that public life is a thankless job. That might be true, but there are a lot of people who take the time out to say thanks for something that I might have done.
What was that moment where you decided that
That I had enough?
Yeah,
Or that I was going to leave at this time?
what was that moment
I decided that I would leave before the 25th election. And I made that public on the night of the 20th election in Balizé House. When I spoke that night, when we were receiving the results, I was happy that we had won, but I made it quite clear then that I would not be doing this again. So at that time, the decision was made, and I think it was around that time. I also said to you, and you all don't listen to me, huh? I said to you all, it was my intention to leave before the 2020 elections. So to leave at 2020, after that first term. But because of the circumstances of COVID, and the fact that there were so many young people in the government, I did not think it was fair on my part for my comfort to walk away, leaving these young people without the benefit of my experience and leaving the country without a closure on the COVID experience. So I decided to go again in 2020. And that is how I went for the period 2020 to 2025. And along the way, at the end of that term, during the last year of that term, I reminded the population of the party and that is my intention to go. But it appears as though most people didn't believe it. And I understand that because it's not something we've been accustomed to. And because I think there are very many people who believe that nobody walks away from the office of Prime Minister. I never saw it that way. I am very honored to have been given that opportunity. I did it to the best of my ability. I know that I didn't please everybody every time, but I think that, you know, on a balance of reason, that we would have made some improvements and would have dealt with some difficult situations, which, having not dealt with them in the way that we dealt with them, it would have been a far worse situation. So we served the country. But when it was time to talk about the next term, which is now, I had no difficulty in saying that it is time for me to come out. And I'm comfortable that coming out, I'm leaving a group of people in government and in the party who could have done what they did here today, which is to settle whatever differences we may have in terms of who had ambition to do what, to know that it is important here for all of us to rally around a candidate of our choice, so that the president could pick somebody in our caucus and we continue in a seamless way to provide the country with stable, honest, competent government.
Mr. Prime Minister, the Chief Secretary, in commenting on you leaving office, he stated that he is not pleased that Tobago's autonomy did not occur under your tenure. He's disappointed.
I don't want to be too harsh on the Chief Secretary, but I want to ask him to stop taking Tobagonians for fools. How many times do we have to tell the Chief Secretary that it takes 3/4 of the votes of the Parliament to amend the section of the Constitution that will provide this autonomy that he is talking about? He's not a member of Parliament, so maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about. But I give him the benefit of the doubt that if you are so invested in attacking people relentlessly and making personal attacks on people, at least find out what you're talking about. He knows that the PNM only has 22 seats in Parliament. He knows that the PNM has not had 3/4 majority in the Parliament. He knows that when the bills came to the Parliament, even if those bills were going to be passed into government, he knows that he has said that that is not what he wants. But the majority of people in the Parliament said, this is a document in front of the Parliament, we vote on it. The majority of people in the Parliament, which are PNM people, voted for it. But that is not enough to bring about the change. If he wants to engage the issue, you notice he stays very far from talking about those who did not support it, because those are his friends. His friends in the UNC vote against it. He is not talking to and about them, but he is talking to and about the PNM that voted for it. Imagine those bills had in there a commitment to give the Tobago House of Assembly additional responsibilities and significant additional funding. And they vote against it. And he cheers himself by saying he's glad that the bills were voted down. And now he's wasting your time and my time talking about me not giving him and Tobago autonomy. I cannot give you what I don't have. We gave you every PNM vote in the attempt to give you 6.8% of the budget and to give you greater responsibility in Tobago. And that is clear, so I don't know what he's talking about. What he's talking about is pure politics, hoping that Tobagoans are stupid enough not to understand that he's taking them for fools. So I hope he'll stop doing that, because as a Tobagoan, I feel offended that he's taking Tobagoans for fools by talking that nonsense about not giving Tobago. We cannot give Tobago what we don't have in the Parliament. In the Parliament, depending on the nature of the decision to be made, you can make some with a simple majority, 50% plus one. Or you can make some with a 2/3 majority. But important matters like changing the constitution to remove central government and the responsibility of a minister to the island of Tobago requires a 3/4 majority, meaning 3/4 of the member of the parliament must vote for that. And that being so, even without that, we have arrangement in the Tobago House of Assembly Act for the discharge of ministerial responsibility to take place through the Assembly without Section 75 being amended. So in terms of operations of Tobago's business, there's no real damage being done because the THA Act makes room for ministers to not run Tobago, for Tobago's business to be run by the Tobago House of Assembly under the THA Act. And it has been done like that since the Robinson days when they had 33-3 in the Parliament. 33-3 in the Parliament, there was a 3/4 majority. I didn't see any breakneck speed to make the change that Mr. Augustine is talking about. Now that you don't have it, you're demanding it of somebody who doesn't have it. That is just folly. And he thinks that is a good election campaign. He thinks that is good politics. But I think it's just folly. Because he's not fooling anybody except he has a handful of friends around him who, this cliche about giving you autonomy, knowing that the Parliament, unless the UNC vote for it, some of them, to add to the PNM votes, to get to the 3/4 majority, it's not on. That's what it is. So when you see him again, explain that to him for me, please. And I hope that he will stop trying to fool Tobago people. Because he sounds very foolish making that argument.
Prime Minister, historically, the political leader of a party leads that party into an election and then becomes Prime Minister. So Minister Young will become Prime Minister having not led the PNM into victory. How do you think the PNM membership would the PNM membership be embracing of that?
I expect that the PNM membership will understand the circumstances, and the main circumstance is that you would know the PNM membership knows that we don't go to a convention during an election year. That's where we are. We start with that. And secondly, the PNM membership will understand and know that a PNM minister being selected by the president is the best option for the country. So once the vacancy arises, the president will make a decision, and I'm sure PNM members will prefer that a PNM member is selected then.
You mentioned that you're going to CARICOM meeting later this month, and then
No, not this, February 19th.
February 19th, and then, so do you intend to stay on as Prime Minister during Carnival? And would it be Minister Young as Prime Minister who will be announcing the election date, or would you do that before you have
I said before, since I am leaving, I try to arrange that I don't be the one who's announcing the election date. So I expect that will work out. So when I leave, those who are left behind will do that.
Any consideration on who you would like to replace you in Diego Martin in your constituency?
I wouldn't.
Minister Brown.
And I'm sure you would also have read where that has been dispensed with as not being factual. And in terms of your first part of the question, I don't have anybody in mind. I wouldn't be making any recommendation, but I'm sure that the constituency is busy now looking for someone worthy of representing the people of Diego Martin West.
So what would happen though, because the DPNM convention is not until September, and there's an election before that, what happens?
Then we go to the election before the convention. That's simple.
Yeah, so then, well, who become prime minister then?
You have to ask the voter that. The voters will decide that.
Because there would be a
Who will be
political leader, the political leader would still be you, wouldn't it? Or do you intend to resign from the political leader post?
We will cross those bridges when we come to them. Yeah? Well, if the election is called tomorrow, I'll still be the political leader. If it's called later on, I might not be the political leader. Right? But in terms...
So you're staying on until September as political leader?
I am not saying that. The option is there to do that, but I'm not saying I'm doing that. Those are questions still to be answered.
What would life for Dr. Rowley look like post-Prime Minister?
Oh, the first thing I'd like to do is I would like to be able to sleep through the night. And also at the end of a long night's sleep, to get up in the morning, not having to keep a schedule and manage time according to my calendar all day. That is the first thing I want to look forward to be able to go to bed and get up without a calendar in front of me. And then after that, there are lots of things I want to do. Spending time certain places with certain people, especially my grandchildren, my friends, my farm, the sea, Tobago, Trinidad, Barbados. I'm looking forward to that. And of course, don't let somebody hear this because they're going to be very upset. Play some golf.
Prime Minister, you said Minister Beckles and Minister Young were the two contenders. Was it like a close race for both of them? Like, were the numbers far apart? Or was it vote count?
No, you want to get inside the PNM. At the end of the day, we had a straw poll among the Caucus, and Minister Young came out with the majority. It doesn't involve a three-quarters majority or half a majority. My idea of slim and yours not the same. How many football matches have been won by 1-0? Okay, thank you all very much, and we look forward as we go forward to managing these developments. We look forward to your accurate reporting. Thank you.